So you're in the right place if you think you have joined a approved provider list service-specific webinar for community-based support. We are recording the session today. We will be sharing both the recording and the slides after the session, and any additional questions and their answers. So some of the questions will get answered live, some we may respond to afterwards, and they will all be shared with all the delegates, and you're free to share those with colleagues if they've been unable to join us this morning. So as I say, my name is Shirley Miles. I'm from Go for Growth. We're working in partnership with North Yorkshire County Council to make sure that you have procurement process support as part of this activity. I'll let the rest of the team just introduce themselves before we move along. Adam, can I invite you to introduce yourself? Thank you.
Thanks, Shirley. Can everyone hear me okay? Sound is good? Yeah, great. Adam Gray. I can't see a list of people actually, so some of you will know me, some of you won't. I work in the service development team and I lead on service development from the market in the Vale of York locality in North Yorkshire, which covers Selby, Rydale and South Hambleton. But I'm also leading on the re-procurement and ongoing support to providers in community-based opportunities over the forthcoming years. So yeah, nice to see everybody. I don't actually see anybody, but nice to be here this morning.
Thanks, Adam. Helen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Helen Sams and I'm in the service development team as well and work alongside Adam as a project officer supporting the community-based services work.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Julie Toman, Quality and Governance Officer for North Yorkshire County Council. I've had a look at the attendee list. There's a couple of people on there who I know from Care Connected, and there's a few who have been on the previous webinars. So I will be talking about the same thing. So I am going to apologise that you hear my voice for the fourth time. And just to make you aware, I'm on a team away day. So I am in the Galtree Centre and I have a Zumba class that's due to come out. Not my Zumba class, I'm not multitasking. I've got a Zumba class that's due to come out at 11. So I do apologise if there's any background noise. Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. So I am just a quick reminder then, we are, if anyone's joined us late, we are recording the session and please use the Q&A function if you've got questions as we go through. So each of the team are going to be speaking to a few slides. And what we will do is we can take questions throughout. I might pause between the handovers if that seems appropriate, but if not, we've got a question and answer section at the end as well. So please be assured your questions will be answered at some point either during or possibly after the session. So if I can hand over to Adam, please.
Thanks, Shirley. I'll just take that from the next slide, really. Well, what we're going to cover today, the key overarching changes to the approved provider lists, the key changes to the new community-based support service specification, key contract terms for community-based support, and then on to Julie and the PAMS quality pathway. So let's just start with a bit of a few sentences really on approved provider lists. What are they? What do they do? What is the process and what are we doing at the moment with that? So if I just move on to the next slide, please. Oh, no, one more, thank you. Yeah, occasionally I apologise, guys, if I turn my head to my right to read off a slightly bigger screen and my face is actually covering some of the wording here. But just to kind of take it off the slides, but just not to go through this sentence by sentence, because I think some of you will be familiar with this already. But North Yorkshire County Council are re-procuring our approved provider lists for adult social care. For anyone who isn't aware of that, as it says on the tin, approved provider lists are a pre-approved list of providers covering a defined set of services such as home-based support, home care, community-based support, which we're discussing today, supported living, residential nursing and complex care. And it's our vehicle, it's our main mechanism for procuring on an individual basis. A person comes through to our social care teams and they are assessed as having a social care need, an assessed eligible need for home care, community-based support, whatever that may be. And then they are passed through to our brokerage function. Our brokerage team then looks to the market to try and place that individual within a setting which is suitable for them. So it's very much done on an individualised basis. And it's something like £174 million, I believe, is put through in terms of spend through this individualised setting, through this process every year. So it's a crucial part of our commissioning process. We do have other things as well. We have specific block contract provision for things like shared lives, carers, some community mental health based things, but a lot of individuals, having had that assessed need, this is the mechanism, this is the vehicle for placing them within an appropriate setting. So within community-based support, someone will come through, be assessed from their social workers requiring a community-based support service during the daytime. That will pass through to our brokerage function, who will look at the market, and they will look to sort of place that person with the most effective and the most appropriate person within that locality. So that's kind of generally and very frankly how an approved provider list works. It's it's no more complex than that. It is something that we procure. So at the moment we have a current set of lists, but that kind of contract and that time of the contract is coming to a close. And from the 1st of November this year, it's given us an opportunity to refresh those lists, to make them a little bit more fit for purpose and suitable. For instance, at the moment, the lists are slightly different. We are looking to a set of 4 new lists, which will give us the opportunity to refresh what we're looking for. The mechanism, the approved provider list is a mechanism, a vehicle, but what we really want to do is, whether it be home-based support, supported living, community-based support, or residential nursing and complex care, it's about really trying to, when the dust has settled on who's on the list, look at how we actually use that in a more transformative way. What are our outcomes, our goals for those services? What do we really want to see those providers delivering? And some of that stuff needs to be captured in contracts, and some of it's about the relationship with officers such as myself, with Julie, with Helen. And for community-based support, myself and Helen, it's important just for people to see who we are today, because what we'll be doing, once all that's happened, the approved provider list is up and running, our community-based support providers are there, is trying to make sure we actually encourage best practice, dissemination of good practice between providers across the county, actually getting out and speaking to people, meeting them, and understanding what is good and bad about community-based support. What do we need to do differently? What do we need to do better? How can we encourage providers to co-collaborate with each other? And that is, for me, the important thing is innovation, efficiency, piloting new initiatives, transformation, as much as the vehicle of getting people onto a list. So moving on to the next phase, that probably brings us nicely into the next slide, Sherry Lee. Thank you. And again, that's very much, those are the 4 lists: residential and nursing, community-based support, home-based support, which is anything obviously in the home environment, and supported living. And the more important thing, as I've mentioned already, is that thing around tech, enablement, new efficiency, new innovation, and new initiatives really, and transformation. There's going to be quite a lot of that built into the actual APL specification themselves. But really, that's the kind of thing that we want to try and focus on moving forwards, is to actually say, yes, this is it. We have our list of providers. This is what they're delivering. This is what we want them to deliver. But how can we support that with new innovative approaches, new technologies, new ways of working? There's a few things mentioned there. The new discharge to assess process and timescales from hospital that's emerged during COVID. Digital solutions being a big one. And generally an enabling and approach to trying to encourage self-reliance through the services we commission. And that's really the point of the APLs. And I really want to stress that more than anything. Yes, we will have a community-based support approved provider list. Yes, we will have particular sections within it. But ultimately, once that's been agreed and approved, what we want to really do is try and transform that day opportunities and that community-based approach to make it sure it's the very best it can be for the people that need it, and for those people's needs and demands that are coming through each locality on a case-by-case basis. But obviously that will build a collective of people wanting a particular kind of service, a particular kind of support. And that's what we really need to be about as much as anything else, really. So that's the kind of general thing. The list will commence, the new list will commence from the 1st of November. It will be a 5-year list, if you like, but there'll be time to review and evaluate and assess how that particular service or services are working, how the providers are working collectively as that goes along. And a crucial point for people to note as well, if providers want to have any new customers coming through our brokerage function, any new people, they must be on the new list to actually attract new business. We will have historic rates and some historic payments around the old payment system for existing people. We'll come on to the kind of technicalities of that in a moment. But for anyone new, any new business that you as a provider wish to attract from a community-based support perspective, you need to be on that list. You need to be on a particular part of that list and have a particular rate of an hourly rate of charging as well. But we'll come on to the specifics of that. Okay, next slide, please, Sharon. Accompanying the list will be a standards and outcomes framework. I think this kind of largely comes into your sort of world, really, Julie, but it's just making sure we have some consistency within our application process around standards and outcomes, making sure that we have a quality theme, making sure the management of day provision is good, making sure that we have the kind of sustainability and suitability of service, good personnel, good safeguarding, good involvement in information, and those standards are consistent and will be coherent across all our lists. So there's a certain amount of quality and management of that quality that we really want to get into the lists and our good practice, generally speaking, as we move forwards. I don't think I need to dwell on that too heavily. So I'll bring in Helen in a moment just to talk about the key changes to our current community-based support. And there are certain categories which providers can apply to join. They can apply to join all of those categories. And Helen will take you through those in a second. But I think the crucial thing for me, just to say before we get into that, is that we need to think about the principles of community-based support. And the crucial principle, I've just switched my telephone off, which is very unfortunately wrong at that time, and I can't switch it off. I'm trying to switch it off, bear with me guys. Hoping my wife will answer it. Right, done. Unfortunate timing there, but yes, the crucial principles of community-based support, and you'll see as Anne talks you through this, is about independence, to move towards independent access and making sure people are embedded into the life of their community, into mainstream social, leisure, education and other opportunities. So it's that independence that we really need to focus on. And it's kind of that progressive outcome support, focus on skills development, and generally looking at that kind of self-reliance as well. So those are the themes we really want to emphasize as we move into the new model. And I'll just hand over to Helen at this point, and may come back in at certain points in the presentation, just to have a look at what are the 4 broad themes of the new community-based support spec. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. Yes, and as you can see on the screen there, what we've done with the community-based support is probably better define some key service areas, and it's probably fair to say that there probably wasn't great clarity in the current spec that we've been working to. And these really have been defined and come about really from the conversations we've been having with yourselves, both through surveys, and we had some focus groups, conversations, and obviously conversations with kind of care and support colleagues as well. So those 4 key areas that you can see there, service areas. So there'll be an area around employment skills, and that will be much better defined, and it'll be around developing job search skills, supporting access to work experience, vocational qualifications, and it'll be in most cases for up to a year. So at the moment we kind of can have endlessly people on employment skills. So it's going to have much clearer outcomes around, and it's going to be determined by the assessment really from parent support workers for those people who are identified as having a realistic capability and ambition to gain paid employment. So it's going to be very specific around that. In most cases, it'll be support for up to a year, and that will be employment skills. The second area is day opportunities. And as you can see there, that's around providing, and as Adam's mentioned, that supported progressive pathway to increase independence, and a kind of a real good focus on supporting and developing key skills and abilities. For that, there's kind of a time frame of usually up to 3 years. Again, an indicative time frame. We know things will vary by individuals, but to be beyond that, we'd need to be evidencing progressive outcomes being achieved, or that there's a need for that to maintain well-being. And then the next area is day care or day support. And that's really that support and services for people with those higher level or complex needs. And for those services, there'll be a much stronger focus on meaningful and stimulating activities about improving quality of life for people, and it might be around improving or retaining abilities for people. And then the 4th one is additional support services. And I guess that's kind of quite a new one, but that's around defining that role for where somebody does need one-to-one support into day opportunities. and that can be provided through this additional support service. So it might be, for example, somebody from supported living might be providing that additional support service that would actually come with the individual where they're attending those lower level day opportunities. And as you'll see, in terms of the more higher complex level, the expectation is that that will be able to be supported by the services there, and that no additional one-to-one would be needed because those services will be performing at those higher levels. Okay, and those overarching areas at the bottom of what Adam touched on. So if we just move on to the next slide, just around the key changes in terms of the contract. So again, from the conversations we had leading up to kind of this point, we know that in terms of the community services, there's a wide variety of costing models for various different lengths of sessions that different organisations run to at the moment. So to bring some kind of consistency and I guess kind of a level of fairness around that, it will now be costed on an hourly rate. And that will kind of standardise hourly rates across all providers, as in that will be the way it's costed. So organisations will have the opportunity to submit different cost rates for those service areas and also around level or complexity of need. You will be able to state a minimum number of hours required, but there will be this trying to get this moving for a shift away from kind of fixed session lengths where people have to come for that length of time. And as I've already said, we're going to have a clear definition of employment support because that is something that is nationally set, that's a non-chargeable service. And then there'll be much greater clarity on absence and notice period, which again isn't as clear as it could be currently. And those have been defined there around hospitalisation, and again will be very clearly defined as, if you can read that, it's very small, but around planned and unplanned absences, there'll be very clear payments around those periods. Okay, I think that's all for me. We've hit 10:02. So I'll pass it on to Julie.
Shirley, do you want to come in just to get the couple of additional questions that I've written in the Q&A box first of all, rather than as...
I was wondering if you wanted to just keep going, Julie, so we get done
before the Zumba starts. That actually might be a good plan and pick them up at the end. So yes, if we move on to my slides and we'll get started then. Introduce myself at the start. So I'm here to talk about the quality pathway and the PAMS assessment. So it is a very whirlwind stop tour of this. Don't worry, I will be doing sessions through Care Connected. I know there's a few people on the call who join Care Connected and they're on PAMS system as well. So I'll be doing lots of information through the summer around our new approach. So basically, our PAM system is a technological solution to our quality assurance. And the quality pathway, our vision is we want a clear end-to-end process that drives quality in the market, enabling early intervention, providing support at the right time and when it is needed, and have a consistent approach that enables good quality care. We want to be able to identify risk in the market early, so we will be risk rating providers. And when I say that on previous webinars, people have picked up on that. That's for us. And again, it's a completely supportive measure again for that early intervention to make sure we're putting the support exactly where it is needed. We are going to be more flexible in our dynamic approach to our quality assurance, which is some learning through the pandemic. So where we can do things virtually, face to face, and trusted assessments as well. We're going to be aligning our standards more towards our CQC, again, to support you with inspections. And if you're not CQC regulated, again, build that best practice in. Can I have the next slide, please? I did mention earlier around trusted assessments. So again, this is a way where it's about responsibility and accountability, but also giving yourselves as providers the opportunity to prepare for quality visits and see that expectation that Adam touched on earlier around the outcomes framework. So the new system will allow you to do self-assessments as well. So you'll actually be able to see the questions that's been asked and look at what evidence you have and an appropriate time. So that's going to be really, really good. Again, our driver is about market sustainability and reducing provider failure and to work better together. So next slide, please. So at a glance, this is the quality pathway. And I know it's really small and I don't expect you to be able to read this, but basically that blue route is your first year on the approved provider list. So there's lots of different interventions along the way, just to drive that quality within the market. And the green route is ongoing after that first year, and you'll see the self-assessment in there and health checks. The purple route at the bottom is new. It's going to be our pathway to outstanding for those providers that are good and want to take that next step, or just that continuation of improvement. That will be an opportunity for providers as well. And across on the left hand side is the amber route, and that's all our different levels of intervention that our quality and service continuity team will be able to offer you as providers along your pathway on the provider journey. Next slide, please, Shirley. So how are we going to ensure we allocate the support when it is needed? So we're going to have a data intelligence hub model, and it's about how we collate that soft intelligence and that information from the market that we need, and that could be through CQC, your CQC ratings from quality visits, from quality improvement work that's ongoing. We're going to be pulling lots of information, soft intelligence, feedback from everywhere, and again that will inform our RAG rating and to allocate support to where it is needed as well. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, the amber route is where we can allocate that support. So this is just a quick visual diagram to have a look at that. So if you're green and you're a low risk, our approach to quality assurance may be a self-assessment or some dynamic monitoring that we may carry out. We might do some validation visits, and again that opportunity for continuous improvement and pathway to outstanding will be there. And usually the intervention is advice and guidance or resources being supplied to yourself as well, and a little bit of support. And on the other side, we've got level 3, which is intervention and practical support. So that's where we've got a high risk provider as well. So for some of you, so you may have already worked with the quality improvement team, and where they come into the service and they really help you build and support you where it's needed. So that's the different levels, and all of this will be accessible through that quality pathway approach. Like I said, it's about driving quality and sustainability and supporting our care market. Next slide, please. Okay, so Provider Assessment Market Management Solution, PAMS. So as I say, I will be doing some other sessions around PAMS in the future. So basically, it's a technological solution that will support us and hopefully streamline the processes for you as providers as well. So we've purchased this along with 13 other local authorities. So this is a regional procurement purchase of a system. So if you've got services in Leeds, in North Yorkshire, both of them will be using the system. So as I say, it's the 14 Yorkshire and Humber local authorities. If you actually have services other places in the country, you may already be familiar with this system. There's lots of different regional approaches, that regional areas that have picked up the PAN system. For example, east of England are using this system, and this completely links back to the outcomes framework that Adam was talking about earlier. So where we've got that expectations to meet that outcomes framework, we are going to be quality assuring that. So you're going to have that information there, and it's that golden thread that links everything. As I say, it's got 5 domains with 16 standards in it that's built into the contract. There's a section on provider returns. So again, streamlining how we ask you to complete information, and it all kind of being in one place. And we've got a landscape tool as well, which is more for the local authority looking at analysing the market across the board. But that is it for me, Shirley. I did say it was a very whirlwind stop tour, but thanks very much. And we managed to get it done before the Zumba class came out, so thanks.
Thanks, Julie. And I'm not sure you went any faster today than you did on the other days. It's no bad thing when we've got the slides that we're looking at as well. A couple of slides from me then, just in terms of the support that we're providing as Go for Growth to the North Yorkshire County Council providers. Just to reassure you before I start that we will pick up the questions. We are going to come back to them. I've not forgotten those. But I think just to make you aware of the support that's available, we're recording all of these sessions that have been held last week and this week. But we've also got some pre-recorded process webinars. So some of them covering the basics, covering the how to use the portals and the platforms, how to actually express interest, getting the right documents, understanding application forms. And I know that we haven't got to the stage where the application form for this is available yet, but when it is, you can be assured that there'll be more support from us to take you through that process, and just handy tips and hints for preparing yourselves to take part in these opportunities. So we will share the slides, as I've said, so you can link directly through to our YouTube pages, and we are adding to the frequently asked questions document all the time, sharing that and making sure that whoever is asking a question, the answers are made available, and that you can all hear from the team and find out where things are and what you might need to know. You can also book onto a one-to-one Q&A support session, pre-bookable on the link that we'll share. That's with my colleague Jill. What she doesn't know about procurement process isn't worth knowing, so she can help with any process-related challenges that you might have. So that's a half-hour one-to-one session if you're interested in doing that. We've also got weekly drop-in sessions. That's also an opportunity to hear from others. Sometimes hearing what other people are asking us questions might be useful, so you don't need to register for that. You can literally just drop in, and what we'll tend to do is have a sort of broad theme and then take questions. So lots of opportunities for you to have your process questions answered, and then these are just the links from these webinars that have been held, but you can find those if one of those might have been of interest either to yourself and you've missed it, or you think that it might be of interest to a colleague. Now it looks like we've lost Adam, but we have got Q&A, and I'm going to go back to some of the questions, and hopefully Helen, you'll be able to provide some of these answers. So we've got a question from Simon about how long the opportunity will be open. I don't know. Sorry, Helen, I'm looking at you. Are these questions that either, oh, Adam, you're back just in time for our Q&A. Just say we've got some Q&As in the Q&A box. There's a couple in the chat as well that we might need to just move across.
Sorry guys, I completely lost connection there for a few horrible moments. So yes, I'm back in the room. So let's just have a look. Just taking the Q&A. Shall I just take these first of all?
Please,
first one from Simon, which was how long will the opportunity be open for submission from publication at the beginning of June? Just refer to my other notes from this one for 1 second, Simon, if I can just skip out of that full screen. With 6 weeks, I believe, from our procurement colleague for the first round, which will hopefully go live on the 1st of June, but it'll be an open list, so providers will get a chance to apply after the initial round. So apparently the current plan is quarterly. There will be further rounds after the first 6 weeks, as they're just getting that straight from our procurement guys. So yeah, 6 weeks from the 1st of June, but then I believe there's some quarterly applications further to that, if that makes sense. And then let me have a look at the other second Q&A. When do the opportunities and applications open? 1st of June, hopefully, will be the go live date. That's the intended go live date of the authority. It doesn't always follow through that way. But yeah, 1st of June for 6 weeks, and then there'll be quarterly windows of application thereafter. So it's not just a list that closes and that's the end of it. It will be opportunities. But yeah, the crucial window really to try and get into that first tranche will be that first 6 weeks. So if your application fails, can you bid again at another quarterly window? Yeah, certainly. Hopefully there will not be too many failures, Simon. I'm hoping that we will be able to have that conversational piece with providers as well. There will be some quality questions, and we haven't quite decided what those quality questions will be yet with a minimum threshold. However, there is an application and a conversation piece as part of that application. So hopefully we can kind of like make sure that providers, ideally, we're not in the business of trying to like knock people out of this process, and be as supportive as we can really to get things through. So when contracting is sent out, will you be doing a digital version to sign rather than wasting all the paper and speeding up processing time? That's probably one that my procurement colleagues are better placed to answer than myself in terms of how that will actually work. I would hope so in terms of that, but I'll take that back to, I've got one of my procurement colleagues in the background in another meeting, but if I can just get a response on that live during the meeting, I will do. But yeah, my short answer is I don't know, but we'll take that away and try and find out. Okay.
I can come in as well from Simon's asked the question, if your application fails, can you bid again in another quarterly window? There's lots of support to enable you to get through that application and make sure you're successful. If there is a concern around quality service, then there will be an offer of support from the quality pathway to enable you to get your service up to a quality standard to join. So I hope that's answered that, but if not, we can still take that question back and add it to the FAQs. And I know someone's asked, how do you access the FAQs? So through the 4 webinars, this being our last one, we've gathered up all the questions that people have, the frequently asked questions that people have asked. That's why we've been asking you just to put them in the Q&A, just to make sure we pick them up. So once the webinars are finished, we will get the frequently asked questions all updated and sent out. So if there is any questions like Adam's just diverted that question, we'll take it to a procurement colleague. They will be within the FAQs. Thank you.
Thanks,
See, my
Julie.
procurement colleague is trying to answer that one live at the moment, but we'll try and get an answer to that. Just let's have a look at any other Q&As. Contingency, where does non-regulated community and home-based support fit in? For example, support with building and maintaining independent living skills. There's 2 separate things there between non-regulated, this is from Kimberly, 2 separate things there, non-regulated community and home-based support with maintaining and building living skills. I suppose there's 2 separate APLs. The important thing is for the home-based support, that will be all stuff that's kind of anything that happens in the home. But let me just take the community-based support really. I suppose the primary function of community-based support really is to provide a service which is reflective of how people want to live and try and be integrated into the community as much as possible and encourage independent living skills. Interesting to see Helen's take on this too, but for me, it's that day opportunity strand within the community-based support, which will really focus in on that. Something that we'll actually commission as well from our social workers and be embedded in people's care and support plans right from the outset, is to try and get a focus on those independent living skills, make sure that those are embedded into someone's care and support plan, and also that we actually keep in touch with providers and make sure those quality outcomes are monitored, that we are watching, that we are liaising with providers, trying to work with them obviously, but making sure that those skills are there, that we have sufficient move on and throughput, and we try and get away to some extent from a day centre, a traditional day centre, not saying that's a bad thing, but also trying to encourage the market and encourage providers to have those connections with their wider community, to embed and integrate the service into that wider community. So really that independence and those independent living skills is what we want to be about as we make that offer and as we work with providers to encourage that moving forwards on a personal one-to-one basis too, really, I would say. That's pretty much sets out the vision for me. Home-based support, I'm not the lead on, but that's obviously something else that needs to be embedded in that concept, self-reliance within home care and home-based support as well, but particularly within community-based support, I think. And having the fact that there will be some outreach as well, that additional support service, that ability to accompany people to community settings on a one-to-one basis. So, that's a really interesting question, actually. I think the questions are coming in thick and fast, really. Let's have a look. John Storr. Are we correct in thinking that the standard day service charge will not be there on the new APL and we'll need to submit a rate for someone who comes and receives support as part of a group right through to someone who requires one-to-one all the time? Yeah, there won't be a standard charge. It will be providers, John, who will submit a rate to ourselves. For the higher needs people in what you might call building-based provision, we do want to move away potentially from having a additional one-to-one rate. So that would really look to be a collective or a generic hourly rate for the day care and that higher strand of support, really. However, we do recognise that there will be times when one-to-one in some circumstances is required. Helen, do you have any take on that from your perspective?
No, I think you've covered that really. I think, yes, I mean, it will be, and that will be a change. John's right in that it will be an opportunity to, I guess, submit, a range of rates depending on what it is what type of service area you're able to fulfill and to what level of need. So there are going to be those differences in rates, which I guess, to be fair, at the moment, some organisations have have done that currently, but it hasn't been something that's been explicit. So it's going, everybody will have the opportunity to do that. But I know it does make it a different from your side, in that you'll need to define those hourly rates.
Yeah, someone will come and receive support as part of a group, and yeah, that will be a defined hourly rate. That clearly we're not looking in some of the other areas. We'll be looking at no more than 10% variance from the average. We know that a day provision rates vary quite widely and wildly. Obviously, if the rate is particularly high as part of the application process, we might want to focus in and look at that with some scrutiny. But yes, it's looking at that, and then potentially those one-to-one. Occasionally, we will move away to some degree, move away a little from more one-to-one and more of a general group rate. But we expect, as Helen says, there's a good point there that we need to consider as we move forwards. Just obviously mindful of time and questions. We're already on the non-regulated provider list. However, informed contracts were not being sent out due to COVID. Do we need to apply in June and then wait till November, or can we utilise this now? Not quite sure what the question's saying there, Stephanie, but I suppose my take on that is that, yes, you need to apply in June, and then it's new packages. It will take until November for the whole assessment and process for new packages coming through into non-regulated, or should I call it community-based support, for instance, will come through in November. I think, again, Helen, look to yourself, but I think that's my understanding, that yes, you apply now. I don't think the contracts and the COVID thing is an issue anymore, but really the thing to focus on is, yes, if you want to be on the new list, apply. Really the key time to apply is that 6-week window of opportunity, starting on the 1st of June. I slip a little to the 2nd or 3rd, but ideally starting on the 1st of June, get the application in, we'll then process it, and then any new person will come through on those new rates from the 1st of November onwards. I think I've answered that question. Helen, do you want to add anything more on that one?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, if you're on the list now, that will carry through till the end of October. If you want to provide services from the 1st of November onwards, that's when you need to apply in June for the new list. Yeah.
Brilliant. Can day services be based at a hub as well as in the community, and will the cost cover a base? Yes, day services, I would say, can very much be based as a hub and the community. They can be both. Very much in the community as a focus, but a traditional building base, a hub, will be that. And the hourly rate, I guess, on that one, Deborah, would be, the cost of the building base needs to be articulated. So the hourly rate will cover the cost of that base within those hourly charges to the people using that service. But yeah, it very much can be both. Alan, just keep bringing you in just to make sure that I've answered that correctly from your perspective. But that would be my take on that one.
Yeah, I've not got anything further to add on that one. Yeah.
No, it can very much be both. And yes, the hourly rate will need to incorporate that cost of the building base, if there is a building base. Elizabeth, somebody I know well on the call. Hi, I hope you're doing okay. How will the costing work for many in the voluntary sector in non-regulated services? We usually apply for grants or block contracts and not in hourly rates. Yes, that is true, actually, Elizabeth, but I suppose it depends really on the kind of service you're offering. A lot of your services, I guess, will be funded, for instance, carer support services through a grant. That grant will cover a certain amount of the things that you do. Hourly rates, though, it depends if you're doing something different, an over above and outside what the contract is covering for me. So if you are looking to move into that community-based support, yes, I'm afraid it will need to be in the hourly rate submission. This will be when you're placing an individual, an adult with an assessed care need into a service you offer. Quite often you'll be offering services to carers. Carers may meet as a collective group, and that group will be funded potentially through the carers block contract. But I suppose if you're looking to support an adult in need and you're looking to bring them in to a community-based, building-based setting within the community, that's when we'd expect that to come through into the approved provider list, and you would place that adult in need into one of your services and quote us for an hourly rate for that, if that makes sense. Just moving through the questions. Matthew Nutting, does the 10% variation rule apply to domiciliary home care rates? I think it does, Matthew. I'm not the expert though. Helen, I think it does, but I'm not so sure. It's probably one for Go to Growth to take back, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, we'd get Helen just to confirm that one, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we'll need to get some confirmation. It's not the case for community-based support, though. I believe we are the exception to the rule. Paul, Adam said earlier that you're going to cover existing ISC contracts. Yes, Paul, that's a really good point. The existing ISC contracts will remain until an individual adult in need has a review or reassessment, at which case they'll be probably placed onto the new hourly rates. Yes, the existing ISC contracts remain in place and the existing charges for those ISC contracts remain in place. To me, if I'm really honest, that's not ideal, I have to say, but I think in terms of the resource issue and ease of making sure these things are reprocured and getting out to the market, a lot of those historic rates will remain for existing people until the point where that person, so it's what you might call a legacy package, which will be on the old rates until a review or reassessment of the individual. So yes, there will be ultimately over time and the fullness of time, the individuals will be reviewed, reassessed, and we'll move on to the new hourly base rates. But until that point, yes, the historic packages will remain and those legacy packages and old rates will still be in place for those individuals. I don't know, you suggest you do not believe in day centres. No, not at all. I do very much believe in day centres, but I do feel it's crucial that we look to use this as an opportunity to extend our offer as well. I think there's nothing wrong with building-based day provision and day centres. However, I would certainly seek to encourage as much integration into the wider community as possible. Again, not saying you can't do that through a day service or a day-based centre or building-based support. Equally, I sometimes think there are opportunities we miss within community-based support, opportunities to really embed and integrate people into that wider community, opportunities for social enterprises to come along and to try and kind of utilise cafes, leisure centres, community activities and buildings and facilities. But I think the kind of ultimate aim of this is to secure self-reliance, independence as much as possible. But I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't preclude, for instance, a community base from doing that. Okay, moving on to the next question. Matthew again, how do we know what the average hourly rate is? I suppose we don't need to focus, Matthew, too much on an average hourly rate for community-based support. The averages will be applied and variance from that average applied across the other APLs. But for this particular one, I think it's a question of just looking at what hours people and providers descend to submit, and then having that kind of conversation beyond that in terms of if there's something that looks particularly high or particularly out of the ordinary, we'll need to focus in on that. But from a community-based sport perspective, the average isn't as much of an issue as it would be within some of the other approved provider lists. Liz Lucky, will providers be able to update rates offer? Will they have to fully reapply, or those can be easily updated? I think if things were very different in 5 years, it's a really good question. And I think there will be that potential to review rates. Helen, I think this is probably one we'll need to take back, but I'm pretty certain that there'll be opportunities to, I don't really know, actually. It's a really good question. It's one I want to answer myself in terms of how those rates and how often those rates can be reviewed within the APL process, because 5 years is a long time. I don't think if you know anything more on that one, Helen.
No, I don't, but I agree. It's a very good question, and clearly where we are now, no one would have expected to have been 5 years ago. So, and kind of, the issues that have been thrown up in these last couple of years. So yeah, I think we should take that back.
We'll take that back and we'll find out more on that one. Matthew, yeah, our package is currently over the 10%. That's 10% over the average. I don't think that's an issue. Again, that community-based support, it's at the moment, providers on say for home care on an approved provider list can charge quite varying and widely. There's nothing really that stops people charging 10% over an average charge. For community-based support, it doesn't really matter because we don't have that focus on an average charge. And again, moving forward into the hourly based community-based rates, the hourly based support charge, again, we're not too hung up in community-based support because community-based support encompasses such a wide variety of things. We're not getting too hung up on that average or variance above and over the 10%. If someone came back and said it's £100,000 an hour for that service, we might start to raise an eyebrow. We would obviously raise an eyebrow and start to question that. But we're certainly for the community-based support, we don't want to focus in too much on that variance from an average charge. I hope that answers the question for that one, Matthew. Another question from Simon. Are rates to be submitted to include inflation and increases in the national minimum wage? There is uncertainty about costs that need to be appreciated. I think it's up to the provider, Simon, to submit rates that are, realistic, to be fair. And let's be frank, inflation and the cost of living and the national minimum wage are rocketing at the moment. And, there would be no surprise. We need to break down. We will be looking, I believe, I haven't seen the procurement forms, nobody has yet, but to have a look at what that hourly rate comprises so we can kind of see what that encompasses. And yes, it does need to include for me that ability to take into account the increased cost of national minimum wage, the increased cost of living and inflation. And there has to be a certain flexibility on the part of the authority to appreciate that costs are spiraling. And if providers want to retain and recruit staff, then we need to be mindful that that cost is going to be almost counterintuitive, but we need to spend more and invest more in our community-based support to stop people going into longer term care. So no, I appreciate that point, and I think it's one we need to be flexible with and appreciative of. But yeah, the provider gets to submit their rate. We will analyse that rate, obviously, and have a look at it. But yes, it's happening all the time. Rates are rising and inflation, the cost of living is rising. So we very much appreciate that. If hourly rates are the new norm, will providers be able to set a minimum number of hours per provision? Yes. Frankly, that's the answer to that one. Yes, there will be a number of hours of provision of planned hours per day. Only if people give a certain amount of notice to the provider will we actually charge reduced rates, for instance. But with, as Helen picked up in the application earlier in the presentation, that will be kind of clearly defined around the rules of that. But yes, a minimum number of hours will be able to be set. And how often can these rates be reviewed, or are they set? I think that comes back to the question that Liz Lockie asked earlier, Simon. That's probably one we need to take back in terms of once the hours are put in, the fixed providers come onto the community-based support APL, how often can that rate then be reviewed across those 5 years? That's a crucial question, actually. And we really need to look at that in terms of, I don't know the answer, to be quite frank, but I would like to know that response, because it is a critical question. Living costs are going to go up over the next 5 years. And yes, we need to know how often and how frequently, or are those rates fixed and set in stone? I will come back to you on that one. The questions come in thick and fast. Can you imply an inflationary increase annually, and will that continue? Again, that's the thing, one for our procurement guys. We don't really tend to, Helen and I, deal with inflationary increases. Usually, however, inflationary increases are set or defined within a contract or a contractual process, and they differ slightly at the moment, depending on whether that's domiciliary care, supported living, and sometimes the inflationary increases differ slightly year by year. So I really need to get some procurement advice on that one as well. But again, it's an interesting question in terms of the inflationary increase. Is that built into this service annually? And if so, how much? I don't know the answer, but I appreciate the question. Question from John Storr. In yesterday's session, supported living, it was stated the APL rates average will be shared with providers. Is that only applicable to the supported living stuff and not the community-based? Yeah, I think, again, that's usually something where we get away from the average and sharing that average with the other providers and the other APL lists, because of the fact that we're discouraging 10% variance from an average. That's where the average becomes so important. I think that's less important. I'm not so sure if we are or are not able to share that, but because we're not imposing a kind of 10% variance from that or over that average, I feel that it applies less to community-based support. Yeah, sorry, supported living, John, I understand that. So yeah, that's kind of my response on that one. I think I seem to have come to the end of my questions on the list, unless there are any I've missed, Shirley.
No, you did very well. There's a lot. That's a lot more questions than we've had on the other sessions. You just hit lucky, Adam. All the people on the call did. We will share, and the same ones I think that we were going back to get some clarification on have hopped onto this one as well. So we will respond and share the frequently asked questions after the session. As I said before, it's not the last opportunity to ask questions in terms of those process questions. We've got opportunities through the drop-in sessions, through the one-to-ones if they're required. I just wanted to follow up. I think it was Elizabeth who was asking about the transition from sort of grant funding to hourly rates, and that is something that we're really focused on at Go for Growth. So it would be well worth, Elizabeth, if it was something that was going to be a challenge for you, having some time with Jill to think about that transition from grant funded to contract.
Sherry, can I just say at that point that, Elizabeth, your grants will continue. You know, one of the other ways we commission is through what you might call a block grant to particular kinds of individuals, such as carers, shared lives carers, mental health needs within a community. So those kind of block provision for carers will continue. The contracts you have will maintain and be sustained within the current contract term. So that won't affect your core carer support. That's probably an important point to note.
Thanks, Adam. I know you know Elizabeth and what she's providing. That's really useful.
Yep.
Okay, thank you ever so much to the panelists. We lost Julie. She had to go, and I think she got swept up by the Zumba people leaving. We will be sharing, as I say, the slides, the questions, the films, and we will remain in touch and able to support as best we can. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Helen. Thanks to everybody. I will leave you to the rest of your morning.
Brilliant. And just like to thank everybody who's come on the call this morning. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your time all. Right, Alan.
Is that all right?
Perfect. Thank you.
I was still on the, yeah, okay.